You can be surrounded by people all day and still feel completely alone by the time you get home. That's not a contradiction, even though it feels like one. Loneliness was never actually about how many people are around you. It's a specific internal alarm, and it can go off in a crowded office just as easily as it goes off in an empty apartment, because it's not measuring the room. It's measuring something else entirely, and almost nobody's ever explained what that actually is. Here's what makes this so hard to fix on your own. Most advice treats loneliness like a scheduling problem. Go join something, meet more people, get out more. And if you've ever actually tried that while feeling genuinely lonely, you already know it barely moves the needle. That's because loneliness isn't a numbers problem. It's a mismatch problem. And filling your calendar with people doesn't fix a mismatch. It just makes it more crowded. In a minute, you're going to hear about a man named Dean, who had more social plans on his calendar than almost anyone he knew, and still described himself, privately, as the loneliest he'd ever been in his life. By the end of this, you're going to understand the actual psychological mechanism behind chronic loneliness, the specific reason it tends to get worse the longer it goes unaddressed instead of better, and the one shift that actually resolves it, not for a weekend but permanently, because it targets the real cause instead of the symptom everyone treats instead. Here's what this isn't going to be. It's not, just put yourself out there, and it's not a lecture about needing to be more social, because more social contact, on its own, has already failed you if you're watching this, and piling on more of the thing that didn't work isn't the answer. But none of that will make sense until you understand what loneliness actually is at a mechanical level, because it turns out your brain doesn't experience it as an absence. It experiences it as a threat, and that single distinction changes everything about how you fix it. So start here. Loneliness researchers. The work goes back decades. Most notably a psychologist named John Cacioppo, found something that reframes the entire problem. Loneliness isn't the absence of people. It's the gap between the connection you have and the connection you need, and that gap is different for every single person. Some people are wired to feel completely fine with a small circle and long stretches alone. Others need frequent, easy contact just to feel steady. Neither is wrong. But when your actual connection falls below your personal baseline, your brain doesn't file that as an inconvenience. It files it as danger. That's not a figure of speech. Evolutionarily, isolation from the group used to mean a dramatically higher chance of not surviving. No protection, no shared resources, no one watching your back. So your brain built an alarm system for social disconnection, using the exact same architecture it uses for physical threat. Brain imaging studies have shown that the region activated by social rejection and the region activated by physical pain overlap significantly. Loneliness isn't just an emotion, it's your nervous system registering something close to an injury. Here's the part that explains why it's so hard to think your way out of. An alarm system doesn't calm down because you tell it the situation is fine. It calms down when the actual threat changes, which means willpower, positive thinking, just being more grateful for what you have. None of that touches the alarm, because the alarm was never a thinking problem. It's a detection system, and it's going to keep firing until the underlying gap closes. And this is exactly where it turns into something that gets worse, instead of better on its own, because a threat detection system that stays active for a long time doesn't just sit there quietly waiting to be resolved. It starts changing your behavior in ways that make the actual problem harder to fix. Chronically lonely people, across a large body of research, show a measurable shift toward something called hypervigilance to social threat, an unconscious bias toward reading ambiguous social situations as rejection. A friend takes a while to text back, and instead of "they're busy," the automatic read is "they're pulling away." A group conversation moves on without you jumping in, and it registers as being excluded, not just as normal conversational flow. Here's why that matters so much. That hypervigilance doesn't stay invisible. It leaks into how you actually show up, Slightly more guarded, slightly slower to reach out first, slightly quicker to assume rejection before it's happened. And the people around you, without knowing why, pick up on that distance and respond to it, which produces exactly the kind of subtle withdrawal the lonely brain was already primed to expect. The alarm doesn't just detect the gap. Left alone long enough, it starts manufacturing more of it. Here's Dean, on paper, one of the least isolated people you'd ever meet. A packed calendar, a big group chat that was active constantly, a standing Friday thing with people from work. And privately, for the better part of 2 years, Dean felt almost nothing when he was with any of them. Not sad, exactly. Just far away, like he was watching his own social life from behind glass. He assumed something was wrong with him, some flaw that made him unable to actually enjoy the connection everyone else seemed to get from the exact same situations. What Dean eventually figured out, mostly by accident, describing it to someone almost as a throwaway comment, is that every single one of those relationships was what researchers call low disclosure, constant contact, almost zero depth. Years of Friday hangouts where nobody had said anything real about how they were actually doing. Dean wasn't short on people. He was starving on a completely different axis, and no amount of adding more surface-level contact was ever going to close a gap that had nothing to do with quantity. If that distinction is landing for you right now, this is a good moment to hit subscribe, because the actual fix for that gap, the specific thing Dean changed that finally moved the needle after 2 years of nothing working, is exactly what's coming up next. So here's the mechanism behind the fix, and it explains why meet more people so reliably fails. There's a well-established finding in this research that connection quality predicts loneliness far more strongly than connection quantity. A single relationship with real depth, where you've actually been known, where something true has been said and received without it going weird, does more to close the gap than a dozen friendly, surface-level ones stacked on top of it. Your alarm system isn't counting contacts. It's scanning for evidence that you're genuinely known by at least 1 or 2 people. And shallow contact, no matter how frequent, doesn't register as that evidence, which means the fix was never about Dean's calendar. His calendar was already full. The fix was about depth, and depth has one specific requirement almost everyone avoids because it's uncomfortable: disclosure. Saying something true and slightly exposed to another person and having it land okay. Not oversharing with strangers. That's a different problem entirely. Deliberately taking one relationship that was already stable and staying surface level, and choosing, on purpose, to say one real thing in it. Dean tested this with exactly one person, the guy he was closest to in that Friday group. Instead of the usual small talk, he said, almost awkwardly, that he'd been feeling weirdly disconnected lately, even though he saw everyone constantly, and he didn't really know why. That's it. One honest sentence. His friend didn't have some perfect response, just admitted he'd felt something similar and never said it either. 15 minutes of an actually real conversation, after 2 years of surface-level Fridays. That one conversation didn't fix everything overnight, and it's worth saying plainly that it didn't need to. What it did is give Dean's alarm system its first real piece of evidence in years that he was actually known by someone, not just surrounded by people. That's the specific input the system had been missing, and once it got even one dose of it, the constant background hum of loneliness started, gradually, to quiet down, not because his schedule changed, but because the one relationship he had finally carried the weight it was capable of carrying all along. Here's what to actually take from this. Loneliness was never a sign that something's broken in you, and it was never solved by simply adding more people to a life that already had plenty of them. It's an accurate alarm, correctly detecting a real gap between the connection you have and the connection you actually need. And that gap almost always closes through depth, not volume. The people who stop feeling lonely for good aren't the ones with the fullest calendars. They're the ones who took one relationship they already had and let it become real, Instead of collecting more relationships that were destined to stay exactly as shallow as all the others, if any part of this sounded like your own Friday group, that's not a flaw in you. That's just the first honest read you've gotten on what was actually missing.